In this video I'll be comparing all World of Warcraft Classic loot systems in raids with each other and give my opinion as I have tried it all, both from a leading perspective and a player, having led raids for over 5 years and playing since release of Vanilla WoW. I will go into the positives but also the negatives that each of these have and explain which one I think is the best. Then you can decide what's the best loot system for you in WoW Classic. Let's start with the basics, rolling in Classic WoW dungeons. I have hosted raids like this before, both in Classic WoW and Season of Mastery, with a specific loot sheet where it says who can roll on what. Most do not put in the effort of creating that, which can have drama unfold, with a healing priest coming away with a DPS caster item, or perhaps a fury warrior that never tanks getting all the tank loot. The loot system works, but sometimes you have a player that joins last minute, barely contributes to the raid with missing consumables or world buffs, winning the biggest item, or he gets lucky and wins 3 in one night. This results in players getting upset or angry. To prevent this, I have added a +1 effect. If you would win a set item, you get a +1. Then you would not be able to roll on another set item again. If you'd win a non-set item, same thing, a separate +1. Still, the issue with a bad performer winning the biggest item could not be solved, or someone getting lucky week after week with this system, and then someone getting angry after a month of losing roll after roll, or their item not dropping, while being number 1 on the DPS. From leadership perspective in World of Warcraft, you could punish players with having less roll. Let's say you didn't bring your world buffs or no flask, but others did. You could say, okay, well, Timmy, you can roll 1 to 50, others 1 to 100. So the punishment was doable as it is in your own hands. You could make a rule book on what was bad and have a standard deduction for that. This could work, but works better in a guild. A POG, it constantly gets new players involved. When you lose a big item, you think next week more chance, as the guy that won it will be there again. In a POG, this is not always the case. There's also the case of performance. So what if you were number 1 DPS? You did not get any benefits. So players do the bare minimum and they bring enough to get taken again. Look, I don't want to sound like a broken record. It's not all about loot, but this is a video about loot. Keep that in mind. Then we have soft reserve with rolls in Classic WoW, which is, in my opinion, just a better version of rolls in World of Warcraft. This gave you the chance to pick your items. You could make the amount of picks the host would allow, usually 1 or 2, sometimes even 2 on the same item, which allowed 2 rolls. Then if that item dropped, you could roll with others that picked it. The more geared you were, the less items you needed. So if you had new players coming in, you would not mind as much. Many love this system because it gives you the freedom to pick yourself any kind of loot, like a loot council list would give. Still, sometimes you would get unlucky, as your item did not drop, or you would lose the roll. Some players waited months and months, and you lose your item. You also need a loot sheet, ready with what people can pick, as otherwise holy paladins are leaving with retribution gear. In Classic Era this is a problem, as retribution is a joke, which is fine, but it has to be an off-spec roll, so no one will need that item for their main spec. The bad part about all of this is punishment. There wasn't much you could do as a leader except kicking someone. You could lower their roll, but if they are the only one on that item, they would get it regardless. You could kind of remove their WoW soft reserve entirely for being a bad actor in your raid, like as big as wiping it. That would make me feel bad though, as he did help out and was there the entire raid. But that's about it. If this person did not have that protection potion, missing certain requirements like a flask, best is to warn them and then next week they have it hopefully. And if not, we would just replace him next week. There was no reason to perform other than killing the boss. I had to message so many players every week about stuff they did wrong. Loads improved, but many just did not care as long as they got their items. This leaves players feeling bad and eventually moving on to something else. There's also the case of someone soft reserve dropping or not dropping in classic raids, and then that person just fake disconnects. He does not need anything else or has no chance at rolling for it, as the rest is soft reserve. Oh yeah, my dog ate the network cable. My electric went out on my whole block. Kind of fishy when this happens the moment they lost the roll or their item did not drop. First offense, you're like, okay, it can happen. Then it happens the second time. This can get annoying. Now it is time to talk about GDKP, Dragon Kill Points, in MMORPGs like World of Warcraft. How it works is basically you kill bosses, you're there for the raids, and you get rewarded points. These points stack up and then you can spend them on items you desire. But the problems with this is players hoard these points, not going for upgrades that they should, instead of going for random PvP stuff, wanting gear they do not need, but because they have points they can buy it. Daggers not going to Dagger Rogue as he wants a sword all of a sudden, or vice versa for PvP. Humans want swords in classic era, other warriors want edge masters with any weapons. They wait and wait for a weapon, but it just does not drop, so they go for the bad option instead. Players teaming up with each other behind the guild's back with bids. For example, you and I have max DKP as casters, so let's make an agreement. I get these 3, you get those 3. Maybe we even get it cheaper. Someone fully bis and then has enough points, just takes a big upgrade from another as he just has the points. Beginners not wanting to join your guild or raids because they will have 0 dragon points, while the rest have a lot, which is also the case in Loot Council. It's just they do not see it in points. Implementing a cap can help with this, but then they just go max bid on any bis items. This can all cause a lot of drama, and it did in my guild back at the start of Classic. We got out of it during Blackwing Lair though, and had to swap to Loot Council following Molten Core release. Most popular one in guilds is Loot Council. This is a council, usually the guild leaders and his officers, maybe even his real life friends or family. We all know the meme. The guild master give items to his girlfriend and he is, quote, simping, or to all his buddies. JK, but you might have one of these stories. Definitely drop it down below. Would love to read about it with some popcorn. Whenever you're finished with a raid, the council gets in a separate voice chat and discusses where the loot goes to. If you have a decent loot council, there's at least a history in a sheet of what stuff went where, and they are being transparent about it. This does not mean it's still good though. You could be the best performer for 1 year and then miss 2 raids because you're sick, just had something important come up, and maybe you will get wrecked. While I'm exaggerating here, there are countless of stories similar to this. It can result in your loot standing for specific items. Everything you do, not online enough, raid logging, being toxic, making fights with others who just do not know what they're talking about behind your back. This usually ends up with players kissing their behind, trying to be part of the quote clique. 1 week goes by, items drop, but you want the other one more. You get neither, you think, oh well, he deserves it too. This goes on for 2 months until you finally get a big item, but it's not the item you wanted. You talk about it with your friends, but you're scared to bring it up with the council, as this might impact your loot chances again in the future. Maybe one person on the council hates your guts. You got into fights with him because you were trying to mine the same node. You're scared of leaving and starting somewhere else new, as you will have less loot standing and you will lose friends. This process builds up in many players and then they end up rage quitting, joining somewhere else with build up trust issues. And I've talked, interviewed and recruited many of these players from loot council guilds. You will need a lot of patience. This gets rewarded with those type of guilds. They do not disband in the meantime, that is. When I went from dragon kill points to loot council in my guild, I had a rotating loot council of 7 to 8 players with 5 every raid. We all knew where the loot should go to, and even that felt bad in the end. Wherever we sent loot, it was always wrong. Players would go on break randomly because of it, G-quit, go elsewhere, or having anger issues that you had to calm down. Imagine every week talking to the same rogue about the same loot he wants. After each raid, it would not be thanks for the raid like in Soul Reserve or GDKP. It would be, hey, I do not agree with this decision. Then you would explain the decision that you make together with the council, and it would not be enough. Next, he would talk to his friends about it, and this would just grow to drama. I was the main tank. Me getting any upgrade that would be both good for DPS and tank would just feel bad, as I knew others deserved it too. I didn't want to be one of those corrupted loot council memes, and in the end, it just got into my head. We honestly did it really fairly, but any decision you make, players will question it in a 40-man raid environment in Classic Vanilla. In 25-man raids, it could work way better. Our second raid started with walls, which later turned into soft reserve in WoW Classic Vanilla. And I was usually lucky, and it would just feel insanely good winning an item with a roll or a correct soft reserve pick. Players around me would be happy for me. I remember our regular pumper warlock wanting talisman, but then he got Natalian's Tear from BBL, and the next time the talisman dropped again, he had a fit as he wanted to be the #1 warlock on Classic and needed it to parse. Oh yes, he was a great warlock and he deserved it, but have some patience. Let others get something too. Work as a team. That's why we love World of Warcraft. We also got to be aware, as soon as someone is full biz, they drop off. So while you want to give everyone the world, you can't. Gotta leave them wanting something week after week, which is hard. Well, from a player perspective, I would always try to avoid random loot councils. In Classic WoW though, in a speedrun environment, I would be okay with it. I have a free guide in finding a community if you're lost in the description. This goes for any MMORPG game or version of World of Warcraft. You can also opt to join us. Links are down below. We've been hosting for 5 years and our community keeps growing. Next is the one that's been in the crosshairs recently. With Season of Discovery WoW, they have banned it. That is GDKP, which stands for Gold Dragon Points, which is usually done in a pub and not a guild. GDKP is a loot system where everything goes for gold, and at the end the host takes a percentage of the total pot for his efforts. Recruiting, assignments, raid leading, and doing all the loot, the jobs that come with it. Gold is your dragon points, and you can use these points in any future raid. Why is it so popular, and what are the benefits of GDKP? You can always walk out with items or gold. Some never have to farm gold anymore for consumables, which is nice. We have hosted both even split with many the reductions and also performance, where you get rewarded the more you do. We will start with even split GDKPs in Classic WoW, which is everyone gets an equal percentage of the pot. You join the raid, check requirements, prep yourself, and join as a buyer, pumper, or mixed buyer. It is a bit geared already. What's nice about GDKP in Classic is if somebody makes a big mistake and you warn them beforehand about it, and they just flat out ignore you, well, time to give them a deduction. You did what you could to help them. Some players missing items you asked them to get, call them out. They don't have it, ask them to buy it from a player. Loads bring extras anyway. They still do not have it, well, you helped them as much as you could, and you can punish them with a deduction or a warning. This gold then goes to the rest of the players that did bring the requirements. Somebody makes a mistake and wipes your whole raid, well, normally nothing happens. Now that person will get less and the rest will get more. It's more of a good standard. Also, if anyone leaves, he will probably not get invited anymore, and the error community quickly chats about bad apples. If they do this on repeat, they are not welcome again anywhere. If it does happen, you can just invite another person and give him part of the split, minus a fair percentage, as he was not there the whole raid. With even split, we did have some problems of players not improving enough and doing the bare minimum, so recently we swapped to try performance GDKP instead, which is totally different. I honestly like both. In a new fresh experience, even split makes more sense, but in something that's been out for a while like Classic Era, performance can be good too. Next is positives about performance GDKP in Classic WoW. Tanks get a bonus for using the extra consumables and gimping their damage. Furry tanks that are tanking some trash get a bonus because they will have to gear swap and do less damage. The top performer in damage or healing will get way more gold in Classic WoW than the lowest performer. Kings kiting in Nax with loot or KT skeletons, you get a bonus. Mage kiting in Blackwing Lair on the goblins, extra bonus. Highest uptime on Sunder armor, top tank healer as paladin, improved expose armor, mind controlling Vesuvius, scouting AQ40 ID, so we have less mind slayers, top dispel or decurse, warlock's cursing, marking ads, fooling, fairy fire. These are all special jobs you need done right, and players get a little bit of a bonus pot and rewarded for doing so. All this in result promotes learning new things and improving, which is what you want in a raid. Less deductions than even split. As players die early, they in result have less healing or damage, which will result in getting lower gold anyway. Now on to the recruiting for GDKP raids in World of Warcraft. No need to explain anything other than the host percentage and if it is even split or performance GDKP. Usually on Classic Era it is 15%. People hop in and you remind them to prep requirements and link them to Discord. We still have a guild, but we run pugs. After the raid you go through the logs. If there's something going really wrong, players are ignoring their assignment, you can still deduct if you explained it before. Now on to the negatives for GDKP raiding in WoW. Any person can bid you up for the sake of it. A holy priest can bid up anything they want. This includes a two-hander axe that you've been keeping an eye on, that they cannot wear. GDKP can influence players to buy gold to get their items quicker, so they can do more damage and get more gold, which in the result then causes more demand for bots, which we all despise. If there was no gold buying, GDKP could have been the perfect system, but it is not. There is no perfect loot system in World of Warcraft Classic. You have to pick the one you fall most in line with and enjoy. It comes down to personal preference. Some may also opt for loot lists, where you can send in the items you want the most, and then the leadership tries their best to make it work, but usually this just ends up being a loot line with heavy influence for favorites, so a form of loot council. There is also EPGP loot council, but I've never tried that. From my point of view, it's kind of like Dragon Points system. Then there is personal loot, but I will not get into that as we do not have that in Classic WoW. That's in retail. Would you like to have that in Classic instead? Would love to hear your opinion on what you like the most and what worked the best for you. Maybe a cool loot story. My favorite is GDKP if it wasn't obvious. Links down below. See you in the next one.